August 20th, 1989. Two gunshots shatter the silence of a Beverly Hills mansion. When police arrive, they find a scene of unimaginable violence. The victims, José and Kitty Menendez, a wealthy, successful couple living the American dream. The killers, their own sons. This is the story of the Menendez brothers, a case that divided America, sparked debates about abuse and justice, and remains controversial to this day. Act 1. The Perfect Family. To understand this case, we need to go back to the beginning. José Menendez was a Cuban immigrant who embodied the American dream. He'd fled Cuba as a teenager, worked his way through college, and climbed the corporate ladder to become a successful entertainment executive. By 1989, he was earning over $1 million a year. His wife Kitty was a former beauty queen who'd given up her own career to raise their two sons. From the outside, the Menendez family had it all. A multi-million-dollar mansion in Beverly Hills, money, status, two handsome sons, Lyle, 21, and Erik, 18, who seemed destined for success. Lyle had been accepted to Princeton. Erik was a talented tennis player with dreams of going pro. They drove expensive cars, wore designer clothes, and lived a life most people could only dream of. But behind closed doors, according to what would later be revealed, something very different was happening. Act 2. The Murders. August 20th, 1989, started like any other Sunday for the Menendez family. That evening, around 10 p.m., neighbors heard what sounded like fireworks. No one thought much of it. This was Beverly Hills, after all. But those weren't fireworks. Inside the mansion, José and Kitty Menendez were watching television in the family den. Suddenly, Lyle and Erik entered with shotguns. They fired repeatedly. José was shot point blank in the back of the head. Kitty tried to crawl away, but was shot multiple times. The scene was so brutal that when police arrived, they initially thought it might be a mob hit. At 11:47 p.m., a frantic 911 call came in. It was Lyle Menendez, hysterical, screaming that someone had killed his parents. "Somebody killed my parents," he sobbed into the phone.
Someone killed my parents. Pardon me? Someone killed my parents. What? Who? Were they shot? Were they shot? Yes.
The brothers told police they'd been at a movie theater that evening, watching Batman, and came home to discover the horrific scene. They seemed devastated, traumatized, grieving. For months, they weren't even considered suspects. Act 3. Suspicion grows. But then, people started noticing something strange. The brothers weren't acting like grieving sons. They were acting like lottery winners. In the months after their parents' deaths, Lyle and Erik went on an incredible spending spree. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rolex watches, a Porsche, expensive restaurants, courtside seats at NBA games. Lyle even bought a restaurant. They were spending their $14 million inheritance like there was no tomorrow. Friends and family started talking. The police started watching. But there was no evidence connecting them to the crime. Until March 1990. Erik had been seeing a psychologist named Jerome Oziel. During their sessions, Erik had confessed to the murders. The doctor recorded some of these sessions. When the doctor's girlfriend, whom he'd told about the confessions, went to police, everything changed. On March 8, 1990, Lyle was arrested outside the mansion. Erik, who was in Israel at the time, flew back and turned himself in. The case that would captivate America was just beginning. Act 4. The Defense, a Dark Secret. When the case went to trial in 1993, the prosecution's theory was simple. Two spoiled rich kids murdered their parents for money. Cold-blooded, calculated, first-degree murder. But the defense presented a story that shocked the courtroom and the nation. Lyle and Erik claimed they'd killed their parents in self-defense. not because of greed, but because of fear. Fear born from years of horrific abuse. They testified that their father, José, had sexually abused them since childhood. Erik claimed the abuse had continued into his teenage years. They said their mother knew about the abuse but did nothing to stop it. According to their testimony, José was a controlling, violent man who dominated every aspect of their lives. They claimed he threatened them, controlled them, and abused them in ways that left deep psychological scars. They said that in the days before the murders, they'd confronted their parents about the abuse. They claimed their parents threatened to kill them to keep the secret from getting out. They said they genuinely believed their lives were in danger. So, on that August night, they decided to strike first. The testimony was graphic, emotional, and deeply disturbing. Erik broke down on the stand multiple times. Family members testified about José's aggressive personality and the tense atmosphere in the home. The question became, were they abuse survivors who'd snapped under years of trauma, or were they skilled liars trying to avoid responsibility for murder? Act 5. Hung juries and retrials. The first trials, the brothers were tried separately but simultaneously, ended in hung juries in 1994. Some jurors believed the abuse claims and thought the brothers should be convicted of manslaughter, not murder. Others thought it was all a lie designed to get away with murder. The case divided America. Talk shows debated it endlessly. Was it possible they were telling the truth? Could abuse explain what they'd done? Or was this just a cynical manipulation of the justice system? The prosecution came back harder in the second trial. This time, the brothers were tried together. And crucially, the judge limited how much abuse evidence could be presented to the jury. In 1996, both Lyle and Erik Menendez were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury didn't buy the self-defense argument. The brothers would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Act 6. Legacy and recent developments. Today, more than 30 years later, the Menendez brothers are still in prison. They're housed in the same facility now and have reportedly reunited after years of separation. Both brothers have married while in prison. They've become advocates for abuse survivors and have maintained their innocence regarding the murder charges, though they acknowledge killing their parents. The case remains controversial. In recent years, there's been renewed interest, partly due to documentaries and dramatizations, but also because our understanding of trauma and abuse has evolved significantly since the 1990s. Some advocates argue that if the case were tried today, with our current understanding of childhood sexual abuse, PTSD, and trauma responses, the outcome might be different. They point to evidence that was excluded from the second trial, and argue the brothers deserve a reconsideration. Others maintain that regardless of what abuse may have occurred, the brothers had other options. They were adults. They could have left. The brutality of the crime and their behavior afterwards suggest this was about money, not survival. The truth? It probably lies somewhere in the complexity of human psychology, trauma, and the justice system's limitations in handling cases that don't fit neat categories. The Menendez brothers' case forces us to confront difficult questions. Can abuse ever justify murder? At what point does a victim become a perpetrator? How do we balance empathy for trauma with accountability for violence? There are no easy answers, but one thing is certain. This case will continue to fascinate, disturb, and divide people for generations to come. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe for more true crime content.